Jay, you know how we do that thing where we talk about Collider?
I've heard of it.
I was thinking the entire week, what show can you and I bring to the new Collider podcast network? I was up all night thinking about it. I'm ready for my pitch. You want to hear it?
Is it Collider music?
You ready for this?
Sure.
Collider Beverage Talk, hosted by you and I. What do you think?
I mean, that's what the fans want, ultimately. I know that Christian's not a big fan, and that's totally fine, but we stumbled upon to our fans' love of us talking about beverages, and I think it can be a hit. Pitch it to Fernandez.
I think Christian would be a fan of it because we've had some good drink conversations with him, right? Like, we talked about LaCroix and even put a LaCroix in the live show as sort of as an Easter egg for After Schmoe or Sight and Sound, whatever you want to call it. He was also the guy that brought up the idea of Dasani putting salt in their drinks. I think he's on board as long as we do it after the theme song. So I think if we can convince anybody that Collider Beverage Talk should be hosted by you and I, it's him. I think he'd really be taken by that idea.
I'm on board, but since we've launched this, I also have what I'm calling the Christian Harloff Doomsday Clock. So you have 15 more seconds to continue the beverage talk before we get a DM from him.
Here's a sample episode. Guys, did you know that Gatorade is owned by Pepsi and Powerade is owned by Coca-Cola?
5, 4, 3, 2. What'd you get from Starbucks today?
Venti Iced Americano.
And there's the DM.
Thank you so much for checking out After Schmoe. My name is Ryan Snelling, and you know Jaye Williams. What's going on, man?
That's me, J to the A to the Y to the E, your resident music expert. Don't you come around here with that shit.
Who challenged you? Did somebody challenge you?
No one challenged me. In fact, I guess the talk went so well, nobody even responded to it. Like, they're like, yeah, I get it. You made a good point.
You just have to make it known that you're the music genius. We all get it, Jay.
That's true. I am. Even though I did have to ask you for context about Panic at the Disco this week. I'm going to be completely upfront about it.
I thought that was weird that you knew to come to me. Like, what are the odds of all the bands?
We'll talk about it. on Sight and Sound Weekly.
Let's plug Sight and Sound for a minute. So, After Schmoe comes out every Friday. If you don't know, you might listen to this on the podcast feed. It comes out every Friday also on the SK Plus YouTube channel. If you listen to the SK Plus YouTube channel, you can also go check out the podcast feed. So it's there either way you want to listen. We love interacting with you on YouTube, so that's really great. Feel free to comment. Every Monday, the other show that Jay and I do, Sight and Sound, our baby, that appears on the SK Plus YouTube channel every Monday afternoon, and we talk music, movies, and TV. So you can listen to some pop culture talk from your boys, Snelling and Jaye, every Monday. And we also have our own podcast feed and YouTube channel for that as well. So definitely check that out if you're curious. I think we bring something a little bit different than what you're used to, so definitely check that out. Did I do that well? How do you feel about it? We're about to start recapping Legion. We're finishing up the Stars show Counterpart. The finale airs next weekend, so that's on our own feed, not SK Plus, on the Sight and Sound feed. And then we start recapping Legion the week after that. So make sure if you're watching Legion, you're hanging out with Sight and Sound. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. Let's get into some Collider chit chat. I have no idea where your notes start, but I'm just gonna throw you off right from the beginning. Let's talk about Dorian for a second. Where's that in your notes?
Let's see. Okay. Dorian. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 bullet points.
So Dorian is just a breath of fresh air. Okay. I think he's fantastic.
Dorian is my number 5, but that position is actually really interchangeable, so I'm fine with starting here.
Fair enough. Listen, the Collider social media presence hasn't been this good since Josh McCouga worked there. I really like the fact that they're they're cutting together all of this stuff. Essentially what we've been talking about. I can put money on it right now. I don't think Dorian's listened to 1 second of After Schmoe, which is completely fine. We're going to make sure that changes over time. But I love the fact that we're getting these little snippets of shows cut together here and there, thrown out on Instagram. We're getting some behind the scenes stuff. And it's just been really, really refreshing. We even got to see him on some content this week.
Right. So he does have a background in this space. He started, I can't think of what he started right now. I should have pulled up his Twitter bio. I'll do that right now. But he's been doing, he's been hustling the same way that we do for a long time now. And so he definitely can speak on all of these things. Geeks of Color, thank you. Founder and editor-in-chief of Geeks.
No problem.
Thank you. Geeks of Color. So he's he can walk the walk and talk the talk, and so he's a very versatile guy. I think back to Mark Riley used the term Swiss Army man. Was that it?
Swiss Army knife. That's something that can do more than one thing, which is good.
Yeah, but wouldn't you call that a Swiss Army man if you're talking about a man? Like Mark Riley is a Swiss Army man, not a Swiss Army knife.
I mean, I guess so. I just really don't like that movie. How about we just say he's versatile, which is what you get when you hire millennials and a lot of younger people. No offense to older people, but one thing that our generation, I'm going to assume that Dorian is a part of our generation. Yes, I'm 30. I have no idea how old he is. He looks younger, but we can multitask. We can learn on the fly, and I think his presence is going to be it's going to be felt. I give it just a little bit of time before we see him on screen more consistently. I know he's a big fan of comic book stuff. Yeah. I see him wearing, I think he wore a Deadpool piece of memorabilia or merchandise on the Schmoedown. And I mean, I would love to see him on something like a Collider Heroes or whatever the case may be.
Speaking of Deadpool and speaking of Mark Riley, they did the Deadpool 2 reaction today. We're recording this on Thursday, of course, for it to go out on Friday. So the Deadpool 2 trailer reaction went up. So he's hanging with Riley and doing a great job. So shout out to Dorian. Dorian is somebody who I definitely want to have on the show very soon. I teased that a little bit last week. I'm going to wait until he gets settled in at his job a little bit because I have a ton of questions to ask him, sort of how Collider's being operated right now. So I want to make sure that he's getting used to that and has a lot of things to talk about. So we'll definitely have Dorian on soon on the show here.
One thing real quick before you move on that I want to see more of in the future on social media platforms. Listen, I love how reactionary in a good way Collider is in terms of how quickly they are breaking news, especially as of late. That's something we've been noting, how many videos they're doing, which they should be in the business of doing. Listen, we know just as well as anybody, it takes time to film things, it takes time to edit things, it takes time to upload things to YouTube. There's no reason why we couldn't get somebody, for instance, who did the Deadpool trailer reaction?
Riley and Dorian.
Okay, so there's no well, obviously Dorian was doing that, but there's no reason why as soon as the trailer drops, he can't have a camera on a Mark Ellis or a Perry or somebody that's not that doesn't have the camera in front of them for that actual YouTube video, getting their reaction right there on the spot. Again, creating that additional content on social media instantly. And it's also not necessarily taking away from what's going on the YouTube channel. I
wish I had been paying closer attention because I'm looking, when I record the show, I always have Collider videos. I have their videos up so I can see all of their recent uploads or whatever. It feels like they're putting out a lot more. I don't know if that's actually the case or not, but you brought up how often they're putting out those Collider news bits. So they've done 3 today already. I'm sure there's another one on its way. We talked about, to bring it back up, we talked about doing more with less, and it just really, really feels like right now they are finding a really solid groove when it comes to, and maybe it's not different, but I mean, we have the flagship shows, we have trailer reactions, and we have another top 10 series. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it feels like they are firing on all cylinders. Maybe that's always been the case, but it's worth noting.
let's talk about sort of spreading the net a little bit wider. Now, listen, when they did the town hall, when they talked about how Collider makes money on there, somebody asked that question. I thought it was a great question. I made sure to pay close attention to where YouTube actually fell in that whole conversation. Now, I know that they're a part of the complex multi-channel network and this and that, and I'm not 100% sure on how that business sort of works. But we all know that views equal, especially over 1,000 views, which they do a lot of videos that go. I mean, I'm pretty sure all their videos go over 1,000. You get monetarily, pretty much, you get paid for videos that do that. So the more videos they do with consistent amounts of views, that has something to do with the bottom. The bottom end? What's going on with my brain right now?
I don't know.
I'm having a brain fart.
Are you drinking a LaCroix?
No, I'm drinking. I'm drinking the same thing you are.
The Americano. Last week I was so uncomfortable with my LaCroix. I thought you were going through that right now.
No.
Okay.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that I've been paying close attention to the actual view count over the last, 2 weeks or so. And listen, I see a lot of comments from time to time about, the view count dropping off and this and that. View counts are going to fluctuate no matter what, depending on what topics are being discussed, sort of what's hot and what's not in the actual theaters at the time. We've talked about how a lot of Collider's content is dependent on the news cycles. Mm-hmm. Their view count over the last few weeks, essentially, ever since Collider 3.0 sort of launched, has really, really been steady and in a fantastic way across multiple videos. So a show like Movie Talk can easily do anywhere between 30 to 50 to 70,000 views per episode. And I was very curious, and we'll talk about the Steven Spielberg top 10, but I was curious to know where this was going to land, and it's already sitting at 44,000 views in just a day. That's incredible. Something like the Infinity War news bit with 20,000, Heroes with 55,000. The honorable mention for Steven Spielberg is already at 9.5 thousand. I mean, it's doing really, really well right now. And anything above 10,000 to me is very, very successful, in my opinion, for Collider. And anything that's not a flagship show that reaches above like 20,000, I think needs to be absolutely celebrated. And they have so much content, so many of these news bits that are getting above that. I mean, Mailbag with 20,000, the Ready Player One review with 83,000. I mean, that's incredible to me. I think it's a really, really good sign, because consistency is what you want from your YouTube channel in terms of its success, not necessarily peaks and valleys like that.
So one thing I always go back to, we found out as soon as the Top 50 Superhero series ended, we found out that the goal for that was 20,000 views, and that came straight from the big man up top, or the number 2, I should say,
Christian
Dennis. But anyway, I always look at that. That show is very heavily produced. A lot of time went into making that, gathering the talent. There was a lot that went into that video, and their goal. It's a short form video though, but a lot of work goes into it. So if their goal is 20,000, think about their Unsane movie review. That was 7 minutes of them just sitting down and talking about a movie. It compared the productions. I mean, the Top 50 Superheroes show is far more extensive than just filming a movie review at a desk or sitting on a couch or whatever. So I don't understand the people that automatically think that, certain view counts are bad for the channel or whatever, because I just always go back to that metric, that 20,000 for the very, very produced video. And so when you see things like Collider, some of these Collider news barely even break 10,000, but it's like, I don't really know that that's a problem. I don't think that they're afraid of any of that. By the way, I didn't mean to interrupt us, but did Caption This come out today?
Well, that was going to be a point I brought up later, just to throw off your notes. That it seems like as of right now, at the time of recording this, we did not get a Caption This week. I don't know what's up with that. Maybe we'll get some inside information. I know that they were prepping for it this week. I saw a few images that came out on the Instagram feed,
right,
to get people to caption things, but I don't know what was going on today in particular. Today and yesterday were actually pretty heavy news cycles in terms of them uploading videos. I wonder if that's stressful for them being in the office. Like, I'm glad that somebody's constantly sitting at the computer or at least sitting near a bat phone and like calling people and saying, hey, this thing just happened. We need to record a video ASAP. And, Mark Riley has to stop eating his buffalo salad or whatever he's eating over there, or walking Cal. Imagine Cal mid taking a dump and he's just got to be like, all right, wrap it up. He's got to come in. No, I just sort of to wrap up this whole conversation about views and play counts and this and that. I think not only is that 20,000 marker a good milestone, I think, to see them cross, it's fantastic to see them do so much that is crossing that bound, not just crossing it, doubling it, just extremely blowing it out of the water and exceeding it. And it's okay. It's okay for things to do that sub 10,000 thing, because listen, you can't just constantly shoot for the hottest thing that's going on, right? Like, if they just did Star Wars videos, Marvel videos, and whatever was specifically hot, then it would sort of lose their integrity a little bit. You do have to accommodate for all little pockets of movie fans out there, especially the niche ones, right? If they do the new dog movie from Wes Anderson, if they do that, then maybe there is just this pocket of niche fans that will just come over in droves, because getting 100 new subscribers off of that one video is actually far more valuable than getting even 50 subscribers off of a Marvel video that you're doing. I mean, I would be curious to know what that looks like, and I just think by scale, doing things like that is just as important as doing those Marvel and Star Wars videos.
While we're on the topic of view counts, Caption This did like about 15,000 views in a week.
I think that's good.
It is good. And I don't know, Jedi Council came out today. At the time we're recording this, it's 7 p.m., so it's 4 o'clock to them. So maybe it's not too late. I'm sure Caption This will come out while we're recording, or maybe after we're recording, which is fine. I was just curious. So where are we? This is what happens when you throw me off my notes. Okay, I want to go back to last week a little bit. I just want to talk about the live Schmoedown a little bit. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet. We will see it next week. The reason why I want to bring this up is because we were we were discussing it over the past few weeks. Like, we had a conversation. We were wondering why. It only had like 250 tickets sold or whatever. And the one thing that neither of us considered was the size of the venue. So apparently,
I knew that they had a 300 cap room.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I should have assumed, but again, we kind of thought it was weird, and I still think it's weird that it didn't sell out sooner based on where they are. But that's fine. It's neither here nor there, because apparently they're all very happy with how it went. I can only speak to the footage I saw on Instagram. I think it was Roka who had filmed some of it, and somebody, I guess, who was seated in the audience, someone who wasn't participating in the match, had also filmed some behind-the-scenes stuff. Somebody even, filmed like on the street meeting Makuga and Ellis as they were walking in. So I saw some really cool behind-the-scenes video on Instagram, and let me just say, I did not fully realize the potential of this, because it was one thing. I had the context of the Schmoedown at the Star Wars Celebration, which was hype. There were a ton of people. It was awesome hearing people chant, "Let's get ready to Schmoedown" with Christian, like all of that. It was just super epic. But this had a WWE aspect that Star Wars Celebration didn't have, We had the contestants running through the audience. We had more contestants there in the crowd in general because not every, like, the real rejects weren't at Star Wars Celebration because they couldn't go there. Or maybe they were. That might be a bad example. But you obviously had more contestants that were able to be there in Southern California. So I think that it would have been a Schmoedown fan's wet dream. That is what I saw on Instagram. It just looked... It just looked awesome, and I am so happy that they seem happy with this. Christian is already thinking about doing another one, and so I'll be the first to say that I did not have this fully realized, but I am more excited than ever. Did you get to see any of this behind-the-scenes stuff?
Yeah, I saw a lot of the stuff going on behind the scenes, and I watched all the carpools with Christian where he was leading up to all this stuff and sort of talking about all of the Schmoedown sort of hype that he was building up and just his dreams and aspirations for it and all of that. And I think it's fantastic. And you're right, when at Star Wars Celebration, you're not as in control of your production, right, that you would be in booking your own show and this and that. And listen, the good news for everybody that attended, the good news for everybody that got to see the behind the scenes and that will see the episode or the match or whatnot when it actually airs, is that this is only day one, right? This is proof of concept. This is, if you are excited by this, invest in the Patreon or whatever it might be and share and spread the word, and it can only grow from here. That's what I want people to sort of realize about the Schmoedown is more than ever, it's grassroots, and it's at this sort of boiling point where they need the fans to get this sort of investment, right? They're at this point right now where I'm so happy with what Christian's doing, Christian and Mark both, what they're doing with the Patreon and just trying to get it to the next level, because it's at the point right now where if they didn't change something, if they didn't provide something new to people or to try to bring in new audiences, that, it very well could have gotten a little bit stale, but every season they're offering a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's such a nice little nugget and morsel to everybody coming in to just say, man, if I just stick with this in my interest level and sharing and liking and commenting and providing the Patreon, this and that, then it's only going to continue to grow. And just like Collider, people who are fans of this feel like they own a little piece of it. And that's exciting.
Let's segue into, this was a topic that was brought up on the movie trivia Schmoedown page. By the way, we're not going to talk about the matches on here. There's a great podcast available for you if you want that information. But I do want to talk about something that was brought up in the movie trivia Schmoedown page. Someone is concerned about the idea of us Schmoedown fans having viewing parties. And this kind of conversation kind of exploded for me. It was actually that post. It was that post that I saw first, and I was like, wait a minute, is this a thing? And then after that, I started looking around a little bit more and diving deeper, and I saw a lot of people planning Schmoedown viewing parties. And I was excited by that idea. I thought it was really cool. Obviously, you and I, we're really passionate. If we're passionate about a TV show, we like the idea of people getting together and having viewing parties. We did it back in our Lost days. I thought it was kind of cool that the Schmoedown kind of got big enough to where people were talking about doing that. And maybe they always have. I know Late to the Party kind of always did that, but I just hadn't, again, had that realized for me. So more people seem to be doing Schmoedown viewing parties, which is great. I think it's cool. So the post that I saw on Facebook was basically arguing against that idea that the Schmoedown, if anything, needs our help and our participation, meaning comments and the likes and the views in general. And he thought that Schmoedown viewing parties would hurt the show. And I commented, and I'll give you my take right here, right now. I don't think it's right for any consumer to feel guilt when it comes to how they take in content, right? So, for example, some people ask Jay and I, how do you want us to listen to Sight and Sound? Do you prefer the podcast feed or the YouTube channel? What supports you the most? And our answer is listen whatever way you want, because when it comes to my listening habits, I want to listen any way that I want. If you prefer After Schmoe on SK Plus, God bless you, but you can also listen on the podcast feed. It's whatever you want to do. It's up to the consumer, right? And I don't think anybody on the Collider side of the fence, I don't see any evidence of them blaming fans, so I'm not responding to them in any way. But to this person in particular, people should not feel guilty about having viewing parties. If anything, Collider and Christian and Ellis and Fernandez or whoever, even the competitors, when they're promoting their own matches, they can absolutely ask fans to remember to comment, like. They can ask them if they're going to have viewing parties. If you like, please watch it, give us another play, whether it's play it along on your phone while you're watching it on TV. They can ask for that support. That's fine. But as the viewers, we should not feel guilty if we want to have viewing parties or whatever, because if anything, and I know you want to speak on this, if anything, it's actually good for the Schmoedown. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think people's hearts are in a good place for thinking about this and being concerned about it, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But at the end of the day, first of all, it doesn't matter how many people are out there doing this, sort of at the level that the Schmoedown is even at. You could have a bunch of viewing parties going on. It's not even going to move the needle on this, like, at all. I mean, this is a program on Collider that sometimes does over 100,000 plays. People doing these viewing parties and this and that, it's going to be less than 1% of the issue here. And even at that, listen, a viewing party, having all of these people in a room together and watching it and getting to share this love and passion, if you were to bring along a friend or two and have this sort of infectious environment, if anything, that's going to help it even more. I mean, that's going to, whatever people can do to get people invested week to week is a positive thing. It's a very, very positive thing. This does sort of, I find it interesting, the things, I don't spend a lot of time in the Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook group. I'll dip in every now and then just to sort of see what's going on. And I do find it funny that lately it seems like the temperature I've gotten from that Facebook group is a similar sort of temperature I had in Schmoeville or just around the Collider space in the doomsday days. I saw another post on there recently sort of talking about the lack, or actually I guess it was on Twitter, somebody talking about the lack of storylines lately and people talking about play counts not being as high as they normally are. Listen, Christian has a very distinct plan of what's going on with the Schmoedown. He's aware of what he's doing. A lot of the Schmoedown so far has been about developing new talent, right? I mean, we've had big matches here lately, but it's been about developing new talent. I'm sure he knew going into it that not having the big names for a month, people might not have come as much as they typically would have. I'm sure he's fully aware of that, but that's okay because it's about big picture, right? It's about the biggest picture possible, not about if you are the type of company that's worrying about week to week views and trends and this and that, then you're not looking at the big picture, and then we have a problem. We have a really, really big problem. He's looking to build a stable and all of that stuff. The interest level, it comes in a big wave. It's by no mistake that the Spectacular was as big as it was, right? It's supposed to be. It's the climactic event. Then they took a break, and of course, some people it's going to take some time for people to come back and get into it, especially a lot of the casual fans. It's okay, guys. Just relax. It's fine.
We are on the verge. I think we're a month out from the free-for-all, so I'm really super excited for that.
That's like the turning point, I feel like, right? I mean, even me, like I consider myself a relatively casual Schmoedown fan, and I remember watching the free-for-all last year and freaking the fuck out and being like, holy shit, right? They know what's going on.
The free-for-all is also that's another great way to get some of these newbies that much more involved. Because
please have your viewing parties for the free-for-all. Please. I am actually going to promote it right now. I'm going to make up my own flyer.
Okay, all right. The newbies that are going to be showcased in the free-for-all will also help because, I mean, there are people I can understand, and the reality is if you are a Shire... Well, actually, I'm kind of shocked that the Shire Wolves versus Lions Den match has already done as well as it has in the amount of time that it's been posted, because it's been 24 hours and it already has over 110 views. That is fucking stellar. But the reality is, when you have some of these newbies, the views are just going to be less compared to, like, say, Aroka versus JTE. Like, that's the reality. That's not a statement, towards viewership or whatever. But the thing about the free-for-all, I believe it was last year, John, what's his name, from Real Rejects, like, he really, really showed up, and he was not someone we were tremendously familiar with, at least I wasn't anyway. And so, because he did so well in the free-for-all, I was that much more excited when I saw, because I thought, this guy can show up, this guy can play. So every Real Rejects match that I saw after the free-for-all was different for me. I saw a contender. I saw a team that I was more involved with, whereas before the free-for-all, they could have been just another one of those newbies, like a Taylor Robinson or a De La Due, like all those people we may not be that familiar or as excited about something like the free-for-all, because I think Christian said we have like over 28 competitors this year. The free-for-all is going to do tremendous things for the rookies. So I think that the people that are worried about the lesser than Schmoedowns, I think they're going to see a rise in viewership as well.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I think that's pretty much down to what we've already said, just down to being aware, again, of the bigger picture, the investment in the product as a whole.
Yeah. And I guess to close the viewing party conversation, the people that are having viewing parties, they're probably the most diehard movie trivia Schmoedown fans, that they wouldn't let a Schmoedown just be uploaded without their own view as well. You know what I mean? So, like, right. It's just not a concern.
Real quick, I want to give a random shout out to our boy Luke Jaggers, who just messaged us about Jedi Council being at a Denny's. Are you aware of this information?
The Jedi Council that it's up right now is at a Denny's?
I guess so. I don't know. He just said, he messaged me and said, Jedi Council at a Denny's?
Hold on.
I don't even know what that means.
What
does that mean?
I am watching the video as we speak. Will Rey rebuild Luke's lightsaber in episode 9? Okay, the title card is showing up. This is exciting. They're in the studio.
Yeah, I don't know.
What the hell is he talking about?
I don't know. I asked him. Well, I'll fill you in. Continue on with the show.
Yeah. Okay. What? Damn it, Luke. Now Luke's throwing me off my notes. Okay, that does it for Schmoedown. Let's talk about Spielberg top 10. Jaye Williams, who is my favorite filmmaker of all time?
J.J. Abrams. The real Steven Spielberg.
No. J.J. Abrams has yet to make a film, Jay. J.J. Abrams makes movies. He has yet to make a film. Unlike Steven Spielberg. Right?
I guess so, according to you.
It's actually a callback to something Christian said, but I fully agree with, even though people hated that idea. Spielberg, it's the next list that Collider is doing. So obviously, I am absolutely thrilled by this subject matter. So I'd love to get your take on this, but the first thing that I was kind of taken aback by was this idea. We knew that top 50 could not be sustained because that is such a massive number. It obviously makes sense with comic book movies, and like they could do that list next year and it could look completely different because, there are 10 superhero movies coming out this year or whatever. So 50 makes sense for that. But I knew that it couldn't be sustained. Obviously, we couldn't do top 50 Spielberg. So I thought it was interesting that they settled for 10 because I think they could have done 20. I think they could have done 15. But ultimately, I don't know. It kind of feels like it feels more exciting in a way because it feels more. How would you put it? Like just making it about 10 movies makes it feel that much more official, I guess. Like the stakes are higher because you're not just including everything. Whereas like the top 50 superhero movie list kind of includes every superhero movie ever made with the exception of like 10 that people forget about in Batman v Superman. So ultimately, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like the whole concept. I like the whole general idea of doing these countdowns because I know we had top 10 as a whole hour-long show and this and that, but do you agree that the channel does specifically need some kind of content like this?
100%, yeah.
Okay, and I agree that the top 50, you know, it's a challenge to do that. It seems like they spent a long time even compiling all of that information. But I love the idea. I love the idea of them looking at the movie schedule and saying to themselves, is there a top 10 show, a top 10 video that we can do around any of this content? Like my mind is racing, just wondering what type of stuff they could be doing for the future, stuff they already have planned or stuff they potentially already even shot. I'm excited by it, man. And obviously we've seen that it's a success. And I'll be honest, the second video, obviously the second top whatever they were going to do, I was always going to be a little bit worried about it, especially because they didn't spend the time building this one up, right? They didn't spend the time building this up like they did the top 50 superheroes. And when it dropped, I was like, man, is this going to hit as hard? And it did.
Yeah.
It hit really hard. And not only that, but the production value was the same. And it was exciting. And it's riveting to know that they have this type of stuff in their back pocket. I
think maybe part of that, it's because the top 50 superhero list was the first time. It was the first time that people really had to understand that Collider was doing things like this now. Whereas with Spielberg, it might need less promotion because ultimately the fact that they're doing only 10 means that they can just do more afterwards. So again, it's kind of like they just kind of got the engine running and we're off. We're off. And so and like you said, the intro video or whatever they did yesterday came out and did super well, and then they did the honorable mentions today. I don't know, man. It looks really, really promising, and that's another benefit too, is that they're just going to be able to do another one. The turnaround for the next list will probably be shorter as long as the next list isn't another top 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is just me personally. I like the idea of doing these elongated lists. And I like the idea that they are thinking about breaking them up in this and that. But I also wouldn't mind them just doing one concise video if it's shorter, right? I'm curious to know whether or not they did all this content and said to themselves, hey, we have a lot of footage here that's probably too long for one video, so let's go ahead and break it up. Whereas if maybe they did something a little bit more smaller, there's no reason why they couldn't just do a smaller type of video and still have similar types of content. But branding the content, not just branding it with a logo and this and that, but branding specifically how it looks is such a good idea. Like, it's great that I'm just going to assume that from now on, a top 10 or a top whatever, these countdown shows, they're just going to look like this. And that's great. That's fantastic.
I think if they did anything less than 5, if they did 5 or less, I think it could be one video. But then again, the difference, the differing factor here is the amount of pundits that are being interviewed. So like the last time we had a list of 5 was it was probably when everybody in the office did their top 5 movies of 2017. Somebody's just sitting there and they rattle off their top 5, right? And that's easily one video. So it might be a little bit different if you have multiple pundits in on the conversation, because that could easily end up being an episode of Movie Talk. I mean, that could be 30 or 40 minutes of people, but I guess it just depends on if all the work for that discussion is done beforehand, then I guess it could still be one video. I mean, how do you see it? If you had a top 5, do you still see it as a daily video, or do you see it as one and get it all out of the way?
I think again it comes down to the amount of content that you have once you're done with it. But I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't plan ahead and just say, listen, we have these top 10s. These are going to be broken up videos and this and that. Let's make it a weekly series or something, and let's go ahead and plan out some shorter form videos that we can possibly do, where they are a little bit more quick and rapid fire. Maybe you don't get as many personalities on it. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing right now. Here's the question I have. When they did the top 50, they went outside of the specific Collider family, like they went into the Schmoedown family. We had RB3 on there. They even went out to the greater just movie landscape in general. I know that like Ben Bateman was on there, and obviously he's in the Schmoedown family, but where's our ballot? Why don't we get to vote on this stuff?
I don't know.
What the hell? You've got our email address.
Yeah, even the .com gets to vote on this shit.
Well, I mean, I get that.
If Steven Frosty Weintraub has a say in the top 10 Spielberg movies on Collider, then I should absolutely have a say. I care way more about Spielberg than Frosty does. I promise you.
Did Cal get to vote? Did Brett Sheridan? Did Finstock get to vote for? Well, I don't see any Stallone movies on here.
Yeah, I guarantee. Of course.
Actually, he'd be more like, I don't see any Stallone movies on here.
Yeah, that's actually the one thing that surprised me the most about the view count, is that a Schmoedown with Finstock already is on its way to 120,000 views. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I love them, but
Finstock equals ratings.
That's absolutely true. But anyway, I'm especially excited for the Spielberg movies, because that's one of the reasons why I love Top 10. I like anytime Collider is able to bring up all movies as opposed to the here and now, the superhero movies, the Star Wars. Anytime Collider open, I remember, I think it was either last week or the week before, where I was so taken aback because movies like Minority Report and Looper were accidentally mentioned outside of the conversation, and I was just kind of like, yeah, there are other movies other than Infinity War. So aside from the top superhero movie list, I'm glad that they're doing Spielberg, and that can range, for the past several decades because of how great of a filmmaker he is.
Well, just on that point real quick, one thing that I always find fascinating about paying attention to Collider and who's watching and who's not watching is the content that they do outside of what we would consider the heat meter, right? Like if they're doing again, going back to the whole Isle of Dogs video, or even just older content, right? Of course, there are die-hard cinephile movie fans that watch Collider, but a lot of people just want to hear Star Wars and Marvel stuff. So entertaining that audience is important, in my opinion, and developing content for that audience is incredibly important. But I want it to succeed. So seeing a Spielberg thing, in my opinion, is is sort of a move in that direction. But I don't think they ever will forget about that audience. But I think that's an audience that needs to be cherished, right? We want to celebrate. That's what you want. You want a die-hard cinephile movie fan. Like that's, in my opinion, that is the grade A gold star standard viewer that you're investing in as Collider. You're saying, I want these people because they're going to be locked in no matter what. And I think finding those people who aren't subscribed to the channel already, that should be a mission.
I want mature cinephiles not DC fanboys. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. And that's a whole other thing too. That's a whole other thing too, and a whole other discussion. I think is the age group and just the people who watch and who don't watch. I mean, obviously, it makes sense. The whole 18 to whatever it is, 35 age demographic that Collider specifically appeals to. But any company, any business that is wanting to grow, you have to isolate the white spaces, the places that you need to fill, and try to develop content that does fill those holes.
So you only have 5 years before you turn off Collider?
Essentially. But no, then I'll get to work there.
Scott Mantz returned to Collider Video, and he hung out with Perry and did the Ready Player One movie review. I just wanted to bring it up because I miss Scott Mantz. That's all I have to say about it. It was really great to see him. I thought it was hilarious how I don't know why it was hilarious, but he was so enamored with Perry Nemiroff as a film critic. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that's great.
Not that she doesn't deserve it, but he started the video just going up, Perry, you're my favorite critic.
Listen, Scott Mantz and people like Scott Mantz, they don't grow on trees. He's one of a kind in that regard, but people like Scott Mantz is sort of what I've been speaking to in terms of getting personalities on Collider and not just people who can talk about movies. Now, I don't want people to go just start mimicking Scott Mantz, because I love Scott Mantz and that he's the only person of his kind that really exists. But it is really refreshing. And I know that one of my favorite things about Scott Mantz is the passion that he has for the fan base of places like Collider and Schmoedown. I mean, this is a guy who regularly goes into Schmoeville and interacts with people, makes posts, and he's one of the biggest movie pundits in the space, or at least one of the most recognizable for sure.
He's definitely the most well known amongst the community, that's for sure. I mean, this is a guy who would jump into Harloff carpools and just start commenting and trolling Christian. He's the best. He's the best. A lot of people say I'm like Scott Mantz. So
I don't think anybody's ever said that. In fact, some people say that I'm the anti-Mantz because of how cool, calm, and collected I am.
That's true. You are the anti-Mantz, that's for sure. Another person I love? This is someone I've been a big fan of hers for the past, 3 years. Pretty much as long as I've been a fan of Collider. I've also, coincidentally, been a fan of Dani Fernandez. I remember a friend of mine who's outside the film community. He saw something I had retweeted of Dani's. It was like, you know Dani Fernandez? And I said, yeah. He goes, how? And I was like, well, she's a part of this movie community that follow blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, well, I follow her because she's a part of Weird Twitter. I was like, what?
What is that?
I don't know. A friend of mine apparently knows her because she's funny on the internet, not because of anything she does in the entertainment industry. So I thought that even though I didn't quite understand it, I also understood it like she's that prominent of a figure. She's not just someone I know inside this bubble. A lot of people. She has a lot of fans for a lot of reasons: comedy background, gaming background, just geekery in general. But she's also really, really funny. And to my knowledge, this was the very first time she was on Collider. I remember I was always asking for her to be on the Schmoedown show, and she was just kind of there by accident one day, which was cool and great. But I've always wanted to see her because I know she's very busy working elsewhere. I really wanted Collider to snatch her up and get her on some of these shows. And thank God they did, because she showed up. She was wearing a Vegeta costume. She was hilarious. She was perfect. She was also, it was weird to see. She was just unlike a lot of the female pundits that I've seen lately. Like a Clark Wolf. She showed up and she was great. And it was everything that I thought it would be. Very funny. Did you get to see her on Heroes?
I didn't, unfortunately. And now I'm actually going to go back and watch specifically for that. It's weird. I don't know why I haven't been watching Heroes as much lately. You know what I think it might be, just to speak to your point. I think there's been so much cross talk from movie talk lately, and I've been watching a lot of movie talk, that maybe I've gotten my fill in that regard. But that's unfortunate. I mean, I'm going to call my own bullshit on that. It's just like, I love the personalities. There's no reason for me not to be watching it or listening to it. But you know what we didn't get? Where the hell is Harloff and Ellis?
We'll talk about it. I'm going to bring that up during the Steven DeKnight stuff. There you go again. Maybe I should give you my notes. Is this on me or is this on you?
No, this is a part of the chemistry that people allegedly enjoy about our show.
Is it chemistry or derailment?
Yeah, it's a chemistry.
I'm open to both, because either way we will recover, and it gives the show some personality, so that's fine. Don't forget though, another great thing about Heroes, I'm always intrigued when they do the pull list segment. And for those of you who don't know, Schnepp, they do pull list on Wednesdays, but he's moving it to Monday so that we are on the lookout before whatever they call it, Comic Book Wednesday. I don't know what you call it, New Comic Book Day. So yeah, they're gonna change the pull list. That's always something. And also Robert Meyer Burnett is always fire. He's always great. I do think. Yeah, I even said it last week, how I wish that Schnepp wasn't on Movie Talk the same day that he's hosting Heroes, and they have, I mean, because there's always, for the most part, prominent superhero discussion. But, you and I joke quite often about Collider taking our ideas and running with them from the show. But I was kind of watching, and I realized that Schnepp was on Movie Talk both Monday and Wednesday this week. So I think it just kind of comes down to it might be a decision by Schnepp or Fernandez. Like, there's no reason why if Schnepp's coming in to do Heroes, I guess he's gonna like do Movie Talk as well to make sure that he's not just going there for an hour. You know what I mean? So that just might be the case. That was always a concern when Heroes was daily. I was always, because when Heroes was daily, it was always the same pundits, because I guess they couldn't get as many guests. Jason Inman and Ashley Victoria Robinson, those people weren't just going to stop at Collider to do an hour show and then leave. So that just might be what's going on there.
I have a potential solution to that. So I've been thinking about this for a while now. For a while, I mean the last 5 minutes. I think there's a interesting lack of and people are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I feel like there's a lack of comic book content on YouTube, not on YouTube, on Collider, that exists outside of Heroes, comic book shopping, and Movie Talk. What I mean by that, you and I will, I don't know if you watch it as much as I do, but I'll watch Variant, which is another YouTube channel where they go really in depth on just specific characters and their story arcs over the year and this and that. For instance, I'm trying to get a refresher on Cable for the new Deadpool film that's coming up, and I forgot just how crazy technical his backstory is and his background. I would love for John Schnepp or whoever to just break off and do just a crash course video on specific characters that we might see in upcoming movies and talk about their history throughout the comic books and this and that. Like, I get it. Heroes does that sort of in the episodes that they do, but I feel like a great way to get people invested in the long form content is via short form content. And I would just love to see him just get super sweaty in like a 6 to 9 minute video discussing somebody's backstory in an actual comic book.
They have done videos like that in the past, but I agree with you.
I kind of remember that. Yeah.
They should definitely pick that back up. Absolutely. I would agree with that. They should already be working on their Cable video, knowing that Deadpool 2 is coming out. Like, I would really, really love to see that.
Listen, I'm generally a casual fan in terms of the movie space and a lot of this stuff. Like, I'm not like a hardcore nerd about anything specific in all this, especially I love Star Wars. I'm not like a crazy Star Wars person that knows a lot about it. I'm not a crazy comic book person that knows a lot about it. I have comic book knowledge. But when they, for instance, when they ramped up their Star Wars coverage and Christian and Ken were doing those videos where they were just explaining things and the Game of Thrones stuff, are you fucking kidding me? I loved it. I love stuff like that. I was watching every single video, walking around telling people, hey, did you know this about Game of Thrones? Like, I love stuff like that. And I feel like you're right. They have done stuff in that regard, but that was a different time. And maybe we weren't talking about it as much, so they couldn't just take our ideas. So I think there's a way to do it now. And especially with people like Dorian, who can blow this stuff up on social media even more. They weren't doing stuff like that back then. Like, we need this content, and we need it really, really bad. And in this new era of Collider where they're just casting this wider net, please, Fernandez, I beg of you. If you need links, I'll go find the links to the videos. Bring it back and do more of it.
I would love to see, again, I would love to see this, just make it a habit every time a new character is coming out in a movie, do a profile of them, do a history, origin, whatever. I would also like to see them do something. Every time there's a bit of Star Wars canon, it should immediately warrant a video. And
yes,
they have done this a lot, but I don't think it's a habit, because there have been several books that have come out that haven't gotten their own video. I remember they reviewed Catalyst, because I read Catalyst right before Rogue One. I was really involved then. They did a book review then. I think they might have done something for Thrawn and maybe Leia, but they're not. I don't think they make it a habit to talk about every single thing. I would like to see basically what they do for What's the Deal with Canon, but do an individual video for every single series. Like,
yes, preach.
When Shattered Empire is done, explain to people who are, because there are people who are interested in Star Wars canon and would probably love going into The Force Awakens or what have you, knowing more about post-parents, but just aren't going to read comic books. Maybe it's because they don't read comic books, maybe it's because they don't have money to spend on comic books, but there are people.
How you doing?
If you make it, they will come. And I think anytime, I think it's like every 6 issues. I think that's what they call trade paperbacks on Heroes. Every time they release a volume, so like Shattered Empire, even though it was only 4 issues, it eventually becomes 1 volume. The Star Wars comic book, every 6 issues becomes its own volume. So even if it was like Star Wars Volume 1, do a video for that. Explain those 6 issues in depth in a video. Like, I would love to see them get in the habit of doing that.
There were things that took place. I actually found this out via Ken's show, Force Center, like things going on in the commentary. Not in the commentary, I'm sorry, in the Star Wars novelization that I was just fascinated with, man. I was so enamored with it. And granted, I know they talked about it on Jedi Council, but those shorter videos are so digestible for people. You know what I'm saying? And listen, you and I have both done this. So you and I have talked about something in podcast form, and you take your time. You know, you're not as quick and this and that. But when you do it in a video format and it is short, it's edited together, it's quick, again, it's digestible for people, right. That is such a gateway. And I mean, I'll tell you from experience, I've learned things from videos like this on the internet and on Collider. I've gone and told people who are, I mean, not even a casual fan can't even scratch the surface with them, and I see the interest level in me just regurgitating this information to them.
Right.
I've shared videos before. I would love to see Collider in this new era explore just becoming a nerd haven, not just like, obviously the punditry and this and that and developing these shows is fantastic, but there's no reason why they can't funnel down and narrow their fan base for something like Heroes or something like Jedi Council. And I get it, like it could potentially water down all of the content, and I think having too much content on Collider specifically could eventually be a deterrent, I think, like having too many videos to sort through, but there's no reason why they can't find other ways and other mediums to do it and to distribute it, whether it's developing side channels or second channels or this and that. Is that something you would want to see in the future from them?
I have to imagine something like that is coming.
And maybe that's bigger picture, right?
Yeah, but also put them out on the weekend. Like,
yeah,
if they did a profile on cable, put it out Saturday or Sunday before Deadpool 2 comes out. It doesn't have to be during the middle of the week when all this other stuff is going on. I mean,
you're speaking to something else that we could probably go off on a whole other long tangent, and unfortunately we just don't have the time to do it. But
yeah.
I think scheduling and being on a more strict schedule with certain types of content is something that I would like to see the channel do a little bit more of. Obviously, hot topic issues and big breaking news stories, they've got to happen when they happen. And
yes.
their flagship shows do follow that schedule. But, throwing out other random bits of videos here and there, I guess I would like to know a schedule and maybe see a schedule, maybe treat it more like a channel in that regard. I think it might be beneficial to the channel as a whole and just making the current audience more aware of what to expect, when to expect it, and this and that.
I'm thinking about Screen Junkies, because Screen Junkies News is his own channel now, and Screen Junkies News operates similarly to Collider Video, and now the Screen Junkies channel is just sort of like the content that always was. So the honest trailers, movie fights, and the Screen Junkies show. So only those 3 shows exist on the Screen Junkies channel, and then everything else, the daily news, the talk shows, all that stuff is on Screen Junkies News. I don't know if I like that necessarily, because it's kind of confusing. Like, I feel like it could still be on the Screen Junkies channel. So I don't really know.
Listen, yeah, and if I'm being for real, I think we're sort of putting the cart before the horse, and I hate horses.
So do I.
Anyways, that is very big picture stuff, because where we just well, they've gone independent. They've got to run before they can walk.
Well, hopefully it's
they've got to walk before they can run.
Hopefully it's something that we can look forward to, and obviously we're gonna have 50 new employees by the end of the year, according to the Hollywood Reporter. So there's gonna be a larger team in place eventually, and maybe all of this kind of stuff will be, and maybe they will introduce another channel. I think it's hilarious how we had back-to-back conversations, how Collider needs to talk about older movies to bring in the cinephiles, but also increase the volume of geekery.
I wonder if somebody out there is like being tasked with like writing down all the things we say. And then there's like, I don't even know what to do with all this shit.
Right. Yeah. Oh, we caught it, guys.
We've literally laid out like the 10-year plan. So
yeah. We caught it. Don't worry. We caught it, and we're just asking Collider to do anything and everything. So we don't have to.
If you haven't realized by now, we're pretty smart. So good job, us.
We are short on time, but this is the last thing I wanted to bring up for multiple reasons. So I'll just throw out my take, and then I'll hear yours. Steven DeKnight is someone that I'm a big fan of. I haven't seen everything he's done, but I liked what he did with Daredevil Season 1 when he had it. And I was excited that he was directing the Pacific Rim sequel. So naturally, I was pumped that Collider got him, because he said no to my podcast. But he went on Collider, so it was like he was on my podcast. And I liked the idea of having the director. I liked the move of having him leave and not stay for the entire show.
Yes.
I can't remember the director of 999, but he was on Movie Talk, and I kind of thought at the time he took away from the show a little bit, because just naturally he probably wasn't familiar with how the show was handled, and maybe not every director is a great personality on camera. But I thought Ellis did a really good job being ready to bounce around, because Steven DeKnight probably wasn't going to have. Steven DeKnight had plenty to say, and I think Ellis was fielding him more general questions instead of like expecting him to have takes on particular castings and things like that. It was more of, Steven, how do you respond to more people watching Netflix? How do you handle Netflix becoming a more prominent way to watch things as opposed to the theatrical? Like, it was more general industry questions as opposed to what's your take on this movie. So Ellis did a good job sorting all that out, and I did think Steven DeKnight did a good job on the show, and I was excited to hear that he was on Harloff and Ellis, wherever the hell that is. But I basically just wanted to say shout out to Ellis for handling that so well. Props to them for getting that director on. I also thought it was hilarious how they seem to upload the Pacific Rim review like right before or right after movie talk. So I was dying to know if Steven DeKnight walked into the studio as Perry and Dennis were just, putting the nail in the coffin on that review. I think that would have been a hilarious experience.
Yeah, here's my take on him being on Movie Talk. So I thought he was fantastic. I loved how relaxed and laid back he was. In fact, this is why having Mark Ellis as the host of Movie Talk is so beneficial for situations like this. And even having Christian on as well, both of the Schmoes, because this felt like, to me, an appearance of a guest on a Schmoedown live show. Just how they handled it and how they had the discussion. And they're so used to doing that, right? I mean, these are I'm not saying that other people couldn't do something like this. Obviously, guests have been on in other shows and other hosts have had guests on, but the way that it was handled was just so great in this regard. And it was obviously much different than having a Rappaport and this and that. It's somebody that's in the space. But I can't do my laugh on cue. Yeah, sorry. Anyways, yeah, I just thought it was he did a fantastic job. I was catching live show vibes because even though we've talked in the past about when guests come on the live show, it sort of puts a screeching halt to the live show. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's a commentary on how good of interviewers they are, because I think they're fantastic at doing it. I think they're incredible at having discussions like this. And I love when Mark and Christian both are executing that. And I just think Mark is the perfect person to have in these sort of situations, especially when it is specifically an industry individual.
And also liked how Ellis let, I believe it was Jay and Perry, they got to ask their questions, and then Steven was out and they did the rest of the show. And I just kind of thought it worked. It was, we've seen a lot of episodes of the live show that do this. We've even seen a lot of Collider content where someone steps in and then steps out. And sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it completely changes the dynamic. And maybe part of that is it's sort of uncontrollable. Like, I get that, so I'm not incredibly harsh on it when a guest turns out to completely change what the show is all about. The guy that was in, do you remember that Schmoedown live show? The guy on the phone who played the main character in what's his name? Is it Terrence Stamp? He played the guy in A Clockwork Orange, and he was on the phone.
Oh yeah.
And then his castmate was in studio. Ugh. And I remember just being like, man, this is just disappointing.
I remember the first, it wasn't the first, so the first Schmoedown live show in full that I ever watched was the one when I came on for the Schmoeville podcast at one time. Yeah. But before that, I think I had watched it maybe when you got this gig. And I think the first one I ever really watched, it was an odd show because they started it off. And I remember my first thought was, I was like, man, this looks really good. I didn't realize what this was. And I'm pretty sure they had the Russo brothers on. Did they have the Russo brothers on at one point?
No.
They've
interviewed the Russos, and maybe they inserted that, but they weren't on the show.
They had two guys on the show that were like a really big deal, and I don't remember who it was.
The guys who wrote The Conjuring?
Maybe that's
those two brothers that were scaring Makuga?
No, it wasn't them.
With ghost stories?
It wasn't them. I can't remember who it was. I'm going to have to go back and look it up.
I remember showing Schmoedown to our friend, or I don't know if you were there. We showed it to my friend Cody, who has no idea what any of this
I definitely wasn't there.
And He saw like 10 minutes of the live show and looked at me and goes, "Why are there so many fucking people there?"
Isn't Cody the one that doesn't he not like Schnepp for some reason?
Yeah. I can't remember why. I think it was just some antic he had because he knew that it would rile me up. So I think that was part of it. But anyway, yeah, Steven DeKnight was a great get and probably the most flawless guest appearance that I've ever seen on Collider, or maybe I'm forgetting a ton of examples, but that's the one I'm thinking of right now. So naturally, it's the best. And yeah, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure he'd be great on Harloff and Ellis if we ever get that episode. I mean, am I dreaming? Didn't Christian said that he was going to be on Harloff and Ellis?
So I watched, I think it was on the Unsane review. At the end, he said there's Harloff and Ellis up there, did a great interview with Steven DeKnight. So I get what you're saying. I get where you're getting this information, but I don't know if I can 100% take it to the bank as confirmation that that's what's going on. It also would make no sense for them to, like, why would they ever withhold an episode of Harloff and Ellis? I legitimately don't know.
And it wouldn't make sense for them to put the Collider version of it because, like, I don't know. I don't understand.
I don't understand either.
I genuinely don't understand when they don't do Harloff and Ellis. Like,
well, they had that weird background too on their review. Like, I mean, I like it. I like that they were standing
in front of the concrete wall or whatever.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Is that all you want to do today?
Yeah, I think that's it. I need to run to the grocery. I'm gonna get some shrimp stir fry.
Okay.
To make for my girlfriend.
Kentucky is playing tonight, so I will probably step into that. And I'm gaming now on our channel. I've been playing Fortnite, so I might do a little bit of that too. But anyways, this is all shinfo to you. Jaye Williams, where can the people find you online?
You can find me at Jaye Williams, J to the A to the Y to the E on Twitter and Instagram. It's the same for both every single Friday. I'm dropping that music show you guys want, and it's great. I guess it's okay. It can get kind of weird sometimes, but yeah, come stop by, check out my thoughts on all the new releases. More Than Music, our brand new music show, sort of our scripted, not sort of, it definitely is our scripted music show. The new episode comes out March 27th, Tuesday, March 27th. That's next week. So stop by, check it out. It's a good time.
Then look out for my guest appearance talking about the color morale coming up after that, right?
I really need to finish that, and I'm stressed out about it. So thank you for reminding me.
No problem. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell, and just come hang out at Sight and Sound. It's a great podcast feed. It's a great YouTube channel. You'll love it. That's all I got. Thanks so much. We will see you next week on After Schmoe. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.